Alright, here's the final gear update for Thor. Alright, the range piece is going to be the same, and this is the hardest part of the build to get by far. If you want to get it, realistically you have to save scum the Tachyon event, which takes about an hour to set up, 40 minutes to create a backup save if you have to, and is probably going to be a couple hours to get it, but it's by far the best piece. There is really no other good bottom perks you could get on an RNG piece of gear. If you don't want to grind for it, you could get just a piece with a target buff. You could also do the inverse, where you get a targeted spark on the hammer. And the best stat is Valor, and Precision and Might are useful. You don't really want intensity unless you're building the old build. Having one piece of intensity is fine. Alright. For the old build, you would get a 2.1 Odin Force Assistance with good stats. You can't get these anymore though. And you'd run a chest piece that increases your damage. You get a damage buff / defense buff with good stats, right? Like something like this. You get something like this from the Elite Raid. There's also Tachyon pieces. And the heroic piece is going to be Wreath of Use Girdle with Berserker Spark. Again, if you do the inverse, you could have Berserker buff and then targeted spark on the hammer. Okay, that's cool and all, but most people don't have access to the Wreath and the melee piece, so we can't build that. However, with some updates, we can essentially mimic the build, and arguably the new build's better. I've tried it out, it doesn't seem worse at all. And there's going to be gameplay footage of it, so you can see what that looks like. Alright, the new piece, you want a melee with good stats. I would recommend just this piece from the offline vendor. Here's the date for it. Perfect stats, Own Force Breaker, 16% damage is decent, and Faultless Spark is nice to have. Your Warrior's Fury, while it's active, it'll occasionally hit enemies, and those can count. Those can crit, and those can give you Faultless Sparks, which is pretty strong, actually. It's pretty good, top perk, definitely a pretty good bottom perk and good stats. It's not an insane piece, but it's good. This is the piece I would use. And, of course, offline vendor, this takes like 2 minutes to get. Easy. Chest piece. You have to earn this piece, but it's actually pretty easy to get. The only hard part of the build is going to be the range piece and arguably the perfect relics, right? So what you want is this piece from the Cloning Labs with 3.2 is this 320 heroic charge rate while Odin Force is active, and that includes using your laser beam, holding Odin Force, having Warrior's Fury active, or being overcharged. So it's almost 24/7 Odin Force assistance, 320 heroic charge rate, which is insane. The best bottom perk is this lethal nimble overdrive. If you kill an enemy with Odin Force attacks or perfect evade, you get a 4-second Warrior's Fury just for yourself. It doesn't buff the teammates, but it's a nice emergency thing to have. This middle perk right here, who cares? But I think you can get a perk that gives you, what are they called? Nanite augments. You'd want that in the middle over this, but this is pretty much a perfect piece, and you want triple stat. These are the stats. Resilience is garbage. You get you your one piece of intensity and one piece of resolve, which is all you need. You know, stats aren't great, but you run it for this 3.2, which you need, absolutely. And the 4-piece, again, another easy piece, just offline vendor. Here's the date for it. I found it. I was looking through 2040. The reason I did Precision Valor Might instead of Precision Valor Resolve is, one, we already have this chest piece, which gives you all the defense you need. And with Warrior's Fury, you're invincible anyways. You're almost never going to take damage. And with this, you're not going to be one-shotted, which is nice. The reason I went with Might over Resolve is, one, Might increases your ultimate damage, and we don't need the Resolve. That's basically why I did it. The stats on this thing are good, as you can tell. It's super easy to get. This middle perk is actually decent. It occasionally gives you some intrinsic bursts. With this build, you're going to be overcharged a little bit more than the old build. The rampant supercharge is 300% heroic charge rate and 300% healing effectiveness, so you heal much more while you're overcharged, which you're going to be overcharged over half the time, maybe 60 or so percent, you know. And if we're very conservative, let's say we're overcharged half the time, that's still 150% heroic charge rate, which is really good, and it gives you the Berserker Spark, which you need. And if you want to build the inverse, where you have a targeted Spark Hammer with Tachyon Surge, you can go Berserker Buff with targeted Spark instead. And here's the offline date for that piece. Okay, stat relics. There's 2 Valor relics. I think the vendors, the normal vendors, every week they sell one with a powerful boon and a gamma resistance, and that upgrade perfectly. These are powerful boon is the best perk you can get on these relics because it makes your power attacks more likely to crit, which gives you your tachyon and damage buff, which is cute, but you don't honestly power attack very much. It doesn't matter much. Okay, but this is not the best relic you can get for Thor. The ideal relic is going to be a Shard of the Cosmos with 2 pieces of Valor, and the third stat you'd want proficiency or precision or might. You'll take anything basically. And this melee boon is actually good because it increases your chance of your Warrior's Fury occasionally critting, which is cute, but it increases your crit chance of your Bifrost, which is really important actually. And so you want melee boon and perks that can give you nanite augments with. These are basically perfect stats. Okay. Exotic Relic, Nornstone Lethal Will, no question. The reason you use this is 4 seconds of your damage buff is nice. Your damage buff's actually going to last usually a lot longer than 16 because while you activate Heroic, it doesn't tick down. And 10% crit chance while it's active, which is nice for some of your attacks. You're more likely to proc, but also your Bifrost is more likely to crit, which is insane, right? Your crit damage is going to be around 550. And the active is pretty good. It's a 35% damage, and its impact lasts 18 seconds. Okay, here's what the new build is going to look like, right? The melee piece that is mostly just a stat stick with this Faultless Spark, which occasionally triggers. That's nice, right? Grips of the Storm. You honestly wouldn't care much about the power attack. It's better than Pin, but it doesn't matter much. You just want this with good stats. Valor's the most important. You wouldn't want, ideally this would be perfect stats, Might, Valor, Precision, because you already have 1 piece of Intensity, but as long as it has Valor and 1 other useful stat, like Valor and Precision and Target Buff, that's good enough. I would take that. Fearless Battle Plate and Belt of the Allfather. These 2 are basically freebies, super easy to get. This one you have to earn, but it's easy to get, and this one is the hard piece to get. And here's the old build. Again, can't get this piece anymore, can't get this piece anymore. This piece is actually hard to get, but whatever, and this piece is still really hard. And relics, ideally you get Shards of the Cosmos, but realistically for a long time you're going to have the ISO 8 relics, and just Nornstone Lethal Will. There's no other relic that's even worth considering. Alright, and as I mentioned, you can do Targeted Spark Berserker Buff or Targeted Buff Berserker Spark. They have some advantages and disadvantages. The Targeted Buff is going to be easier to trigger initially, and the Berserker Spark is better for triggering Bifrost. So if you want to spam Bifrost against enemies over and over and over again, Berserker Spark is actually better. However, with the new update, the God Blast can count targeted sparks or targeted buffs. So if you were spamming God Blast more, the targeted spark Berserker buff build is a little bit better. Both are very good and they function very similar, but there is, some nuance. You could switch around if you want, but honestly, either way is very powerful and it's the perfect way to build Thor, Yeah, they're both so good. They both trigger so easily too, the buffs and the sparks, right? Not only do sparks trigger from your ult, but also just continuously hitting enemies. That Odin Force spams a ton of lightning, tons of hits, and target spark, obviously your hammer, the lightning you throw down, and God Blast. They both trigger so often, either way is really good. And of course you want, on the spark or buff, you want the hammers with Tachyon Surge, because that's a 50% extra damage that no other piece of gear can give you. Champion points, again, same as everybody. Crit ones are the most important. These are decent. Specialty skills, there is no other options I would recommend. And for the Assault Heroic, do Cheese It. where you get the 3 charges and the cryo. I'll drop a link on how to do that, definitely. But for the Warrior Sphere, you get the damage buff ones. It's the best team buff in the game. Buffs teammates 30% crit chance, 25% damage, and 25% crit damage. The others don't even consider them. No. Assault Heroics, this is the way to go, and the Bifrost, absolutely. You need the Plasma for triggering sparks, and the Overcharge is super important, especially with the new build. There's don't think about anything else. This is how you build them. Mastery skills, this is how you build them. This slot, you have options. You can look around these if you want to try something else, but otherwise everything else I would keep exactly the same. Stat priority, again, Valor's by far the most important stat. However, secondary stats, you want a piece of resolve. Only one is all you need, truly. One piece of intensity is good, but not super important. The stun damage from Thor is not amazing. His cryo instantly builds up. The intensity is mostly for building up your lightning, your electricity, the shock, and the plasma from the ult. Might will increase your ult. Precision increases your God Blast, and proficiency increases your chance of your ult critting, which is really good, and your proc chance, your chance of proccing targeted perks. So it's pretty good. Resilience is garbage. You don't really want it. And yeah, again, the one piece of intensity is nice. You definitely don't want 2 or 3 though. Absolutely not. And you don't need any intensity, but I'd say get one. Overall, again, this Thor's basically as good as the other Ultimate. Thor's insane, second best hero in the game, blah blah blah. He's not the second hardest hitting hero in the game, but overall second best hero. That team buff, especially from Warrior Sphere, makes him bananas. Again, Elite Raid, second best for the Elite Raid. He's great during the Forge. He's pretty good during the Vibranium Room. He's pretty good during the Eye phase. Yeah, that's Thor. I'll show gameplay of him as well. Hopefully you enjoyed the new build.